Hello, my name is Joanne Barthold. This is a presentation on spirituality versus psychosis at Massasoit Community College, May 10, 2023. Spiritual phenomenon predates what is known as modern-day psychosis, and evidence suggests that humans have experienced audible hallucinations since biblical times. Spirituality was the main form of treatment for mental distress and delusions before psychology became a discipline. Through researching published academic articles, this paper will explore the similarities and differences between spiritual phenomena and psychosis. After culminating data on both subjects, research appears to show that embracing auditory hallucinations through spiritual practice can serve as a respite to those who hear voices. At the same time, this research has found that spirituality that consists of stigmatization and shame can be harmful. Representations that bring on feelings of separation and withdrawal can be problematic and prolong recovery from mental distress. Furthermore, this paper looks to understand the ways spiritual phenomena and psychosis occur within the individual. In addition, it is important to consider the individual's own opinion on their experience with auditory hallucinations and the ways their faith can be incorporated into a treatment plan for recovery. This paper also shows that it is important to build a strong recovery model that includes the person's faith. Most importantly, keep in mind that spirituality can become a hindrance to recovery. Although there are many ways it can be incorporated into a treatment plan for recovery. Primitive man's reality was strictly interpreted as a supernatural phenomenon. Most decisions were made based on myths and superstitions. Humans lived in harmony with nature, and without tools for writing, the way of capturing knowledge was limited and could only be done through the imagination. Before the 18th century, there was no language or treatment for mental illness. Someone suffering from mental distress would be labeled as having demonic possessions or prescribed a mixture of harsh herbs and rituals. Some were even ostracized from their communities. In primitive times, humans worshipped gods and deities such as the Great Mother, who was considered God in feminine form, representing dark, light, death, and life. She was also considered to be able to remove demons that represented emotional complexes through worship, ritual, and practices. Ancient Egyptians documented incidents of mental distress on papyrus, which they treated with magical spells and plant medicine. In ancient times, individuals would seek out wise women who lived in the wilderness to obtain knowledge and healing from them. In one such ritual, the fate of a person would be decided by Mother Nature herself. The individual would be left alone in the woods and placed in a hole and left with nature to decide their fate. In the Bible, Abraham hated idols, even the worship of nature itself. Abraham believed that the voice of God told him to get away from those who worshipped idols. Abraham had many experiences where he felt he heard the voice of God. On one such occasion, he states, the voice of God told him to sacrifice his son, Isaac. The voice recanted last minute, saving Isaac in this biblical story. In Abraham's story, there seems to be a change in the way humans express their religious beliefs and how the authority given to the voice of God now precedes human well-being. Those who believed in religions of Abraham and Moses in the Bible also believe that mental illness is a form of disobedience, if not demon possession. Somehow it is blamed on the individual experienced mental distress. All phenomena were attributed to God or the devil. Each religion, whether it be Christianity, Judaism, Muslim, or Buddhism, believed in outside forces and higher powers outside the human body to be the root cause of most forms of mental distress. Even up to the 18th century, many doctors still believed that mental illness was a result of demonic possessions. and used invasive treatments such as electroshock therapy and hydrotherapy to treat symptoms of psychosis. Individuals were isolated in mental health institutions, otherwise known as asylums, against their will. The treatment was unfortunate and gruesome, including lobotomies and trephination, which were aggressive surgical procedures where holes are drilled into the skull to release the supposed demons. Voodoo practitioners around the world also treated mental distress through rituals and plant medicines. Voodoo practitioners believed in demon possession also. Since the 19th century, mental illness had been viewed with stigma and shame. To be mentally ill meant judgment, isolation, and stigmatization. There have been many different approaches taken towards the resolution of mental distress, although for most of history it was interpreted through a spiritual lens. Evidence of prehistoric skulls as early as 6500 BC and evidence in mental health asylums of the past shows it all. Here is a timeline of different individuals in history who contributed to the treatment of mental distress. Shamans were considered witch doctors who used herbs and substances to bring themselves into euphoric states where they would interpret their dreams, revealing curses and cures to the communities in several ways. Imhotep of Egypt was treating individuals through therapeutic divination and the interpretation of dreams. By 1800 BC, we see in the Bible Abraham's story and how it begins to see the change in the way humans express their religious beliefs and how the authority is given to the voice of God. By 1300 BC, Moses, also from the Bible, he also states that he hears the voice of God and that it commands him to give the order to the rest of Israel so that they could be free. The Hindu religion spanned from 2300 BC to 1500 BC, and the entire quest in the Hindu religion is to forget the self and escape the wheel of samsara. This religion urges individuals to abandon all earthly attachments and become wandering beggars who live a life of complete self-denial. By 300 BC, the therapeutic approach came along and it differed significantly from the known shamans and witches of the past. The systems used by these founding fathers rejected traditional religion and magical divinity, and they advocated for more natural remedies. Sigmund Freud, the father of psychology and psychoanalysis, he contributed to the foundation of ideas and theories that revolutionized our understanding of mental health. In the Bible, Abraham's story changes how phenomena such as audible delusions are interpreted. He believed the voice of God had authority over all human affairs. Moses, the father of the Jewish religion, also from the Bible, hears the voice of God that also gives him orders. In the Hindu religion, on the other hand, they believe that all forms of mental distress or hallucination, such as auditory hallucinations, were a sign of misalignment with God, and that one should be in a constant pursuit of emptiness, meaning without thought or mental distress. And even if you did have some form of mental illness, you were encouraged to ignore it and suppress the emotions. Each group interpreted and dealt with the voices differently. Shamans interpret auditory hallucination as a necessary connection with God, spirits, and ancestors. Individuals of the Bible, such as Christians, interpret the voices as directives, and astrologists interpret the voices as gifts rather than disorders. Up until about 300 BC, there was no language for mental illness. All forms of mental distress were viewed through a spiritual lens. The therapeutic approach differed from the ways of shamans and religious leaders. This system rejected religion and magical rituals and leaned towards more natural remedies over supernatural ones. Sigmund Freud, the father of psychoanalysis, revolutionized our understanding of mental health and human development. The 17th century brought in the scientific revolution. Sigmund Freud and John Bowlby's attachment theories show how religion and spirituality could be considered coping strategies for mental distress. Studies show that individuals who lack a secure attachment figure with a nurturing caregiver are at risk of developing psychosis. Attachment styles are the ways individuals adapt to relationships during development. Childhood trauma plays a major role in the development of psychosis. A spiritual figure helps improve the individual's experience with symptoms, although can be negative if the delusions are in a negative form. Individuals who experience chronic psychosis delusions also have a higher level of insecure attachments. Religious figures blame complaints of mental distress on individuals' sinful behavior. Pastoral psychology has been on a mission to cure the souls of people since the 1730s until this present day. These communities view mental distress as a sign of demonic possession and are big on conversion as a form of treatment. On the other hand, groups like voice hearers, who are a network that help individuals make sense of their voices, believe that spirituality can improve the quality of one's life. They reject authority and challenge the pathologizing of their symptoms. All the voice hearers share negative experiences with the mental health system and have all reported having experiences with mental distress, leading them to seek treatment. The voice hearers remain oppositional towards psychiatric treatment to this day. Individuals who experience psychosis find it difficult to find support or comfort within both the psychiatric community and or the spiritual religious community. Psychiatry only views psychosis as psychological, and the spiritual communities simply lack the framework or language about psychosis. There are some emerging movements surrounding the relationships between spirituality and psychosis. There's more and more research showing that spirituality and psychology together are essential in managing psychosis. Both emphasize the need to remain outside the limiting boundaries of the senses during and after painful traumatic events. There are several new forms of treatment for psychosis, yet there is still a lack of any mainstream integration of spirituality into the treatment of psychosis. Psychologists do not usually include spiritual practices within their treatment plan, and most spiritual practices and beliefs do not encourage seeking psychologists for treatment. Critical thinking should be encouraged in both cases, as the ability to have clarity tends to ease mental distress. There should be more emphasis on an individual's experience rather than any predetermined position. Having insight helps an individual in meaning making and builds foundation. Spiritual and religious beliefs are essential to many and are often used as coping mechanisms. The future of the treatment of psychosis should be flexible towards an individual's spiritual beliefs, and the spiritual beliefs of individuals who suffer from psychosis should be adaptable to other forms of treatment. In this paper, we will see how these models have been proven to be valuable in the removal of the stigma surrounding mental illness. In conclusion, history has shown us the overlap of spirituality and psychosis. The intersections between the two are enormous, and we may never really know the truth. Either way, we do understand that some things can influence the mind, our actions, and behaviors. Are the origins of this distress and euphoria truly coming from within the mind, or do they come from an outside source? Either way, one must wonder if spirituality and psychosis are truly different, or are they just one and the same? Thank you for listening.